How's everybody doing? In today's video, I'm going to be telling you guys some tips on how to get a thick guitar tone. So first of all, you're going to want to be using a guitar that has humbuckers, not single coils. Single coil pickups are going to sound thinner and more articulate, where humbuckers are going to sound thicker and actually less defined. In my opinion, the thickest sounding humbuckers are actually those that use Alnico 5 magnets, but that's kind of an old school sound at this point, and it's not really modern. Whereas the modern sound, where you can still get a pretty thick sound, would be to use ceramic magnets in humbuckers. Personally, I use ceramic passive humbuckers, and I get a very nice, thick, but cool tone from them, and I really like that. And with the ceramic magnets, they're a little bit more articulate, but that's not really what we're talking about in this video. My next tip is to get a thick tone, you're going to want to use a guitar that has a mahogany body. Now it could be a pure solid mahogany body, or it could be a mahogany body with a maple top or some other type of wood. But the important part is that it has mahogany. And the reason being is mahogany as a body wood seems to convey a lot of mid to low frequencies when it resonates. And the effect of that is that when you're playing from one note to the next, the guitar body has a certain type of energy left in it as it's still vibrating. And as you change notes, that resonance is almost like giving the next note a head start. All guitars will do this. It doesn't really matter what the wood itself is, but in this case, to my ear, I think mahogany bodies sound, they have the richest kind of like carrying over tone to where you can get some really thick sounding chords going, like real, chunky, just real thick tone. Now my next tip for getting a thick guitar tone is to use a thick sounding amp. Now the first amp that comes to mind for me would be something like a Mesa. Now those are very expensive and a lot of the time inaccessible for a lot of players, so there are some alternatives. Orange makes some pretty thick sounding amps, although those are also pretty expensive. What comes to mind for me is actually my Bugera G5, tiny little amp, very inexpensive, and it can sound very thick depending on how you have the tone set. But whatever amp you're using, you want to be at least using enough gain to where it sounds smooth and thick, and then of course you can just add gain as you want until it starts breaking up. And I don't necessarily recommend this, but of course with any amp, you can change the EQ to make it sound a little bit thicker, meaning you could leave the mids and the treble kind of in the middle and then bring in a little bit more bass to make it sound thicker. But you might want to watch out when doing that, because that might be a decent tone if you are playing by yourself, but if you're playing with other people, particularly a bass player, it might cause you to lose yourself in the lower frequencies and your guitar won't sound as clear. So that's why I don't necessarily recommend that, but you can artificially enhance your tone by bringing in more bass on the EQ. And the last tip I have to get a thick guitar tone is to use effects that increase the space that your tone occupies. For example, you could add a little bit of reverb, or you could add a little bit of a delay. And that's actually a fairly important one, because the difference between a solo with no reverb or no delay, the solo will sound, I guess, dry or kind of limited, kind of like it's very clean on the edges. And you can still have that, but if you add in a reverb or a delay, your sound is going to be kind of swirling ambiently, and it really adds to the effect of your playing. Even if the guitar itself doesn't have a super thick tone, it really adds to the space. And if you think about it, even with vocal recordings, almost every vocal recording that you're going to hear in a popular song, for example, will have some type of reverb, or more likely some type of a delay effect, where it's almost not even noticeable, but it makes a profound difference in terms of how much space that person's voice takes up. It'll make a person's voice sound much wider, much smoother, and probably much more pleasant, and just like a thicker sound to a person's voice, no matter what the voice is. And the same applies to a guitar track. So really you can use a delay or a reverb to really enrich the space and therefore make your tone sound thicker. So there you go. There's some tips on how to get a thick guitar tone. If you guys enjoyed this video, don't forget to share it and subscribe, and I will see you next time.